Hi, this is Anna Imagination with the Healing Garden. Welcome to Shifting Perspectives. If you are new to my channel, I am a sociologist, philosopher, psychologist of 30 years. And this is just my journal entry where I'm just needing to decompress. Decompression is actually a huge part of shifting perspectives. Something is going on because I taste that metallic in my mouth again, and I'm having eye pain, which means I'm ready to shift again. I don't want to shift again. But I'm only in the fourth perspective. All right then. Oh, I can actually track it this time. This will be nice. Oh, I'm in the midway point. I'm in the midway point. Because I am holding myself accountable. I made up the rules last night. And then today, I'm holding myself accountable. That's what it is. I remember now. I was holding myself accountable because I'm putting together these plans. And I was talking to the universe last night. And she was like, just ask for what you want. And I'm going, oh God, the conversations we had. She was like, just ask for what you want. And I haven't been. I won't. I knew. And the reason why is because I'm accountable. If I manifest the wrong thing, if I ask for the wrong thing, and I'm wrong, I have an entire world. This is what I don't talk about. It's really important that I get this right. Because if I do have this power, and I get this wrong, I have 8 billion people I'm responsible for. So I have to make sure that what I manifest is spot on, precise. Because I cannot bear getting this wrong. So I won't ask for what I want without significant logical analysis, which is why I'm so obsessed with finding the logical solution to what it is I'm doing. It's because if I can find the proper logical conclusion, I'll know exactly what to manifest precisely so that when I manifest it, no one gets hurt. And I have found these 12 ethics, and I'm going, okay, everyone has to be accountable. And the accountability is going to be the problem because I know what happens when you're accountable. You take inventory of the damage you caused. And I have seen people kill themselves because they were over accountable, because they could not live with their sins, because they could not self-forgive. So self-forgiveness is vital that you get this ethic down before you reach accountability. So self-forgiveness just became an emotion that goes way up there, which means I need to teach you self-forgiveness in depth. So self-forgiveness is going to become the first ethic. I say so. Oh, which is probably why I had that avoidance space. Self-forgiveness is going to be the first ethic because you're going to need it for the sixth perspective. Because if you don't have self-forgiveness, I think of all the self-emotions, self-forgiveness is the most important. Self-compassion, self-kindness, self-love, self-value. Because if you do not have these emotions in place, by the time you get to the fifth perspective and you are an empath, yeah, the fifth perspective is the problem. So as I'm writing out the God Code and I'm putting Triadic Healing together, I'm going over it every single day logically concluding it, drawing connections. What are the consequences if this ethic and this emotion is not in place? What will result if someone learns my program, goes through the process, and they miss the wrong emotion? What if they don't internalize the right emotion in the right order? Because shifting perspectives is traumatic. It really is. Because you have a priority shift. You lose who you are. You restart over. Who am I? That's why you're 3 days of confusion. You don't know who you are. It's why it's so imperative that you fall back on the U of I to remind yourself, oh yeah, that's who I am. But if you don't have a U of I in place, so the question comes down to, where does it all begin? And it begins with you. It begins with the self. Which is why when I teach triadic healing, it is a very exclusive, inclusive club. It's inclusive, highly. Because I have to make sure that you have internalized the right lessons. Because if you don't, you must internalize self-care first. So before triadic healing, it's almost as if I have to do a preparation. This is what's going to be for the foundationals. Triadic healing is not for everyone. So I need to create like a preliminary, a pre-triadic healing course. How do I do this? I'm going to be here for a while. No, I'm not. I can think faster. That's one of the side effects, is you start to think faster, insanely faster. It's crazy. All right, let's do this. Pre-triadic healing. It would have to be the I of I in the self. And it must focus on the first 3 perspectives. And it would be in 3 parts. Going through it the first time would prepare you for triadic healing. There's going to be 3 parts to it. 3 of 3. Triadic healing is the middle point. I understood. So we have pre-triadic healing, and you're going to have post-triadic healing. My head hurts so much, and I'm so tired. Can I just go to sleep? I'm at the midway point. I'm definitely at the midway point. So I'm holding myself accountable. Which is why I haven't said anything much about what it is I'm actually doing here, is because I know once this gets out, I'm going to have a massive responsibility. And this is the first time I finally feel solid enough that I can manage it, because I finally internalized the 3rd ethic of the 11th perspective. And now I'm internalizing the 5th ethic of, I have to have rules, I have to have guidelines that I follow to make sure this is done properly, and I have to hold myself accountable. And I cannot project these rules onto other people. That's not how it's done. That's where we messed it up to begin with. That's what happens when Rome decides to put this together with a fraction of the knowledge. Now, if I know my logical deductions in subconscious mind, and I do, where were they when they put this together? 3rd perspective. 3rd perspective. 5th perspective. 5th and 3rd. 5th and 3rd. He hadn't held himself accountable yet. He was a 3rd perspective. I see exactly where Socrates and Plato fucked this up. I can see where they fucked it up. I see their error. They taught the God code without doing the pre-prep work. That's where Socrates went wrong. He said, you must study geometry. No, that is not all you need, my dear. I love you, Plato, but that's only half of it. No. What ended up happening is they taught Alexander the Great the God Code without ensuring that he had the proper preliminary work. As a result, he got to the third perspective, took the data, and then imperialized the entire Roman Empire for them. This is what the God Code looks like when it falls into the wrong hands. Alexander the Great happens. Rome got their hands on this knowledge. Alexander the Great was 100% a third perspective, 18 years old, and he got his hands on the God Code. Now, I'm teaching it to everyone. I had a problem with this at first. I was like, oh my God, should I give this information to people? Look at what happened with Alexander the Great. Look at what happened with Rome. Look at what they did to Christ. What do I do? Let's talk about my moral dilemma that I've been stuck in. And you finally can understand me because I can finally articulate my problem. Oh, do I feel understood? This has been my moral dilemma. When I discovered that I had the God Code and I could see what it could do, I also saw what happens when you misuse it. I saw Alexander the Great's work, and I saw the Roman Empire and the Council of Nicaea. I saw Christ, and I saw Socrates, and I looked at all the pieces and I went, oh, so this is what happens when the God Code falls into the wrong hands. Socrates had a rule that we don't talk about. It's a secret. And that's the problem. He kept it hidden, which is why when they burned down Alexandria, this got lost. We lost the God Code. Now, his beautiful God Code made Christ what he was. Christ got his hands on the God Code when he was 12 years old. And all he did between the ages of 12 and 33 was study the God Code. And look at what happened to him. He's saying the same stuff I'm saying. Or I guess I'm saying the same stuff he was saying. Either way, we went to the same school. The point is, Rome stepped in. And Rome killed him. Because they didn't want that information getting out. Because they got it from Alexander the Great. And they wanted to use it. So the God Code ended up in Rome's hands. So I had Alexander the Great and Rome to go by. And I'm looking at this going, I know what they did. Now, Alexander the Great had the third perspective and he had access to the God Code. Rome. I know Nero's mind. Oh, second perspective. Constantinople. Constantinople was the second perspective. Now they say that he was the first Christian. They say that he's the one who legalized Christianity. And he did. He legalized Christianity. Was he really a Christian? He built the first church. You know what a church is? Washington, D.C. You want the psychology of architecture? Watch this. Oh, I know. Society. Steeples. Steeples. Monoliths. Washington, D.C. Dan Brown, if you ever listen to this, thank you. Thank you so much. Dan Brown, Easter egg. Boop, there it is. All right. Washington, D.C. was 100% mirrored after the Roman Empire. Oh, solid. That's why there's pillars, Greek pillars all over Washington, D.C. It's because it was 100% mirrored, mimic, repetition after the Roman Empire. That was not done by accident. A steeple, a church, is an overcompensation of control to establish a delusion of authority. Now, which perspective would do that? Oh, I love riddles. I love riddles. Which perspective overcompensates with control and authority as if to say, no, I'm bigger? Well, that would be your third perspective. So the Roman Empire was a third perspective, specifically Constantinople, third perspective. Now, third perspectives are really good at focusing on their own agenda at the expense. Wow, I'm protecting him. I am still protecting him. I can see it. As I'm talking to you, I am evaluating my partner's U of I own behavior. And I'm going, is this attacking him? Is this reflecting of him? No, he's not, because he's not a third perspective. He is a sixth perspective. Actually, he's a 6-7 perspective. He has already learned this. This is not part of his agenda. It is not reflective of him. Therefore, I'm okay with him as my U of I. So when you focus on your own agenda in the third perspective, I am so tired. You are not holding yourself accountable. You're in the anger stage. You're projecting because you are accessing your scarcity mindset. There it is. Tying back into the 12 stages of grief, 12 stages of change. So focusing on agenda, accountable projecting, and scarcity mindset, which is why they hoarded all the money from the Christian people, because scarcity mindset. So Rome and Alexander the Great, which is why they had to imperialize. Oh, how's Putin doing? Putin? Oh, so you want to see something funny? When a person who is in charge is threatened by scarcity, like a lack of resources, they project that lack of control onto other people in an attempt to gain control by force if necessary, hence the concept of war and imperialization. As a result to their lack of feeling in control due to the low resources, they overcompensate their lack of control by projecting it onto others. And if you have access to an entire army, you tend to launch war on other people. So can we all take a moment and step back and say to ourselves, I wonder who's doing that to the world right now. Look at that. It's Putin. So Putin is a third perspective who is projecting his scarcity and feeling of anger and lack of control due to a low resources on this planet by bullying Ukraine. Same thing happening in the Middle East. So now we can point a big finger at them and go, well, there's the third perspectives. They are the first to go to war. So I was looking at Christ's dilemma. Now, he was not coming right out and saying any of this. He was doing it through code. He was 100% speaking through code. He was not direct. And I often wondered why. So I thought, do I follow Christ's belief? Do I follow Christ's behavior? Do I speak in code also? I did for a while. But there was a logical fallacy that Plato, yes, I'm finally at that point. Plato had a logical fallacy. Secrets lead to vulnerability. Secrets lead to ignorance. And the ignorant become prey. Now, I knew this. When I became upset about my abuse and I wanted vengeance, I thought about vengeance. I thought, how do I retaliate against the people who raped me back in May? I was raped in May of this year. Date raped. Somebody put 3 to 4 tabs of Molly in my whiskey. So, vengeance crossed my mind. This is the logical argument I had with myself. Well, vengeance doesn't solve anything. That's correct. Vengeance does solve nothing. What would be the purpose of avenging? Vengeance would lead to me hurting them. I don't want them to be hurt. I want them to be healed because I felt bad that they felt they had to do that to other people to feel safe. Yeah, that's right. I felt really bad that those people felt so insecure, so unsafe that they felt that they had to do that to other people just to feel safe. So how do you make this right? Do you report it? Why would I report it? Because reporting it, there's no justice system. There's no reporting it. You report it, you talk it to the police about it. What do the police do? I've done this 4 times. The police laugh at you. The police are the 4th perspective and the 3rd perspective. They're not going to help me. All right. So how do you resolve this issue? And I knew that they had already targeted a woman that I met at a party because I watched them use their targeting technique on her that they used on me. What they do is this. These men literally teach each other to walk up to women, strangers, and French kiss them. The ones who don't object, don't use boundaries, are also the ones who don't go to the police, which makes them prime rape material. They hold classes with each other on this, and they teach this to other men. So there's like 3 or 4 men in this bar that go around teaching this practice and doing this. I had 2 of these men do this to me 4 or 5 times. And while I was at one of my last parties, I watched a woman I was talking to get French kissed by one of these strangers. And I said, "Do you know him?" She's like, "No, I have no idea who that was." She froze up, she fawned, she flopped, did nothing. He just marked her for rape. Yep. So I thought about her a lot. Do I go to the police? I rose up a lot of stink in my community. I reached out. I talked to the heads of the 3 people in charge of the 3 largest communities. I got to see true colors. I saw one person say, "The guy you're accusing of rape is like my best friend. So, you have mental illness." No, I'm a whistleblower. So I was removed from the community because I objected to rape. The second person said, "If this is going on, I want to know about it and I want reports. Absolutely come to me. It's important that my women are safe at my events." I said, "Very good. That's the right answer." Same thing with the 3rd community. So I went, all right, now how do I protect this woman? Because I know going to the police isn't going to go do a damn thing. What do? You educate the victims. You educate the people. Educate enough people, and people stop being ignorant because they know. Suddenly, the narcissists don't have any victims because everybody knows. Oh, I'm very vengeful. I have a huge amount of vengeance in me, but I'm not targeting. I'm not projecting violence and aggression towards my rapists. Ooh. I am going to project love and knowledge to their victims. So that's what I did. I created Triadic Healing to educate people on how to not be a victim to rape or abuse. I am taking their victims away from them. Power of education. That is when I started calling Triadic Healing Triadic Healing. That is when I realized that where Plato fucked this up was his secrecy. Because he, like me, was worried about people like Alexander the Great, Rome, because he knew this would fall, what it could do if it fell into the wrong hands. But the wrong hands can only use this information if it's a secret. You see, it's going to get out there. Please, by all means, take the God code, use it, but become aware of it. Everyone needs to become aware of this, because when this information gets to the wrong hands, and it will, you're going to be able to see exactly how it is they use it to manipulate, to use it as a weapon. Knowledge. Plato, are you listening? Knowledge can only be weaponized if it is kept as a secret. Now, here's the fun part. How do I mitigate this falling into the wrong hands? Well, I know that abusers are in the foundational category of those perspectives 1 through 4, and I know that they are mostly all conformists. I also know that they are judgmental and prejudiced. I know these characteristics about them. I also know that there is no way they would be able to wield the God code properly without the proper ethics learned. So they'll never be able to manifest, because manifestation requires emotions that they don't have access to because they have not learned the appropriate ethics. So it's not like they're going to get the actual God code, but damage can still be done. So I changed my marketing. I used words like nonconformists, LGBTQIA. I used words like magic. And I used words like humble. I deliberately used words that I knew these people would never go toward. Not until and not unless they actually did the work. So they would actually never subject themselves to any self-help. So by presenting this through the healing garden, narcissists won't come here. People like Alexander the Great, people like Putin would never take a look at this. They would look at it and go, oh my God, she's an idiot. They would look at it and go, oh my God, she's crazy. That's right. I'm crazy. Sure, call me that. Go right ahead. Because that's their psychology. It works so beautifully. So now the people who could use this for some significant damage aren't even looking at it, because I got unicorns and rainbows all over my branding. See how that works? Likewise, the people who actually know it, it's humbling when you come to my weird branded things of glitterly, sparkly mermaid shit. It's very humbling. And it's strategic. And it's on purpose. Because if you're not going to be humble enough to overcome my branding style, you shouldn't have the God code. See how that works? It's really cool. So once I realized this, I realized that that's going to give me a lot of momentum to get this information into the right hands to educate you on how abusers work and function. So when it does finally fall into the wrong hands, you, the majority of people, is going to be intelligent enough, educated enough to go, oh, we know what they're doing. We know exactly what they're doing because of ABC. So that is my plan. So now I am putting together how best to communicate to you to start infiltrating this. And I realized where it all begins is parenting and setting an example. Now, I have been talking to people for the last 10 months, 11 months, about their lives, about how important they are to themselves, and people aren't listening. And I said, you know what? People don't prioritize themselves, but you know what they prioritize? Their children. I thought about things over the last few months, things like the government getting in my way of this, me sitting down with the government, with them going, you can't have Authenticity City. It's just an idea, it's just a mindset. What are you going to do? Stop me? I thought about them feeling threatened by this because it's a bunch of third and fourth perspectives. I wondered what that would look like. That's why I put out there, if anything happens to my children, me, my network, or my network's network, I'm telling you right now, if I suddenly vanish, I'm right. So I feel a lot safer after that point, going, well, there you go. Now I can come out and pretty much say whatever I need to say. And if they touch me, they just confirm that I am right. Checkmate. So that feels good. That freed me up to finally speak out and say what I need to say. And then I thought about the government not letting people come to me. I thought about people reaching out to me saying, well, I would love this mindset, but there's now a tax in place. So if I announce that I am part of your community, the government now has a heavy tax on people who are recognized. And I thought about what they did to the Native Americans. I thought about what they did with the reservations, what they're still doing with the reservations. I'm seeing how our government, all governments, treat Indigenous people. I know I've seen the sociology of how we think when it comes to land equals resources, people equals resources, resources equal power. I've seen it. I've just been studying sociology for like 30 years. So I'm looking at all of this layout going, all right, how do I think the government would move? I know the government would penalize the people who acknowledge Authenticity City as their own working government. Oh, they'll say, yeah, absolutely. You can have that. You're not doing anything wrong. It's a mindset. People are free. They don't have to be here. And then I see them financially penalizing them. So I saw me going to the government saying, let my people go. And then I thought of Moses, let my people go. And I remember the 9 plagues of Egypt. How did that end? Let my people go. Angel of death swoops down and kills a bunch of children. You know what that did? That pissed off a lot of adults. I don't like the way that was handled. Why would you threaten their children? And then I thought, threaten their children. Because parents love their children. No matter how horrible the person is, they love their children. And that's when I realized, you might not think you're good enough for change. Oh, but your children are. You want a better world for your children. So do I. There are people who refuse to breed because the world is shit and they feel guilty bringing a human being into this world. What does that tell you? I had it. When I first got pregnant, I had substantial guilt for bringing a person into this world. Really think about that for a minute. That we feel guilty for breeding. That we feel guilty that this is what our children are getting. Are you angry yet? Because it's time to get angry. Are you ready for change? Because it's not for you, it's for your children. Now you're listening to me. Now it matters. Because at the end of the day, this shithole that we've made is what's going to our children. How do you feel about that? Because I feel like shit. And I realized that people prioritize their children. Everyone's doing it. I work like this every day so my children can have a better life. Are they getting a better life than you had? Or is it the same life, the same shitty life that you had? Or is it just a next evolution of a shitty life that you had? No, parents prioritize their child. And that's when I realized the children. Do it for your children. That's what motivated me. That was my breaking point. When I realized that my mental illness was affecting my children, that was all it took. Nope, we're done here. I am fixing this shit because I have to be a better mother. I realized I wasn't doing a good enough job and my children were suffering. That was my breaking point. That is when I said, shit needs to change. My children were worth it. And that equated to my change. That's when I buckled down on my own. That's when I created Triadic Healing, the first round of it. I wanted to find my U of I, and I wanted to give him something better than I had for myself. I didn't want him to have a broken, mentally ill version of me. I wanted him to have the best version of me. I wanted him to have the best woman in the world. I wanted him to have the best partner in the world. So I put myself and my mind through a lot to make sure that I could be the best for him because he deserved it. And I wanted my children to have the best mother in the world. So I put myself through more to make sure that they got it. In the name of love for others, I decided to change. No, we live in a society where we are told not to value the self, but we do value the ones we love and our children. And I realized that that was the way in to your heart. Rule number 1, don't scare the children. Whatever change may come. You want to scare an adult, you want to keep an adult calm, keep their children calm. Psychology. An adult has a metric inside of them that says everything is fine because the children are laughing. Likewise, children have a metric inside of them that says everything is fine because mom and dad are laughing. It's amazing. Laughter equals safety. Did you know? Literally, laughter equals safety. Smiling equals safety. So if you're smiling and if you're laughing, you're actually showing the children that it's safe. And then I thought, well, wait a minute. If we don't scare the children and we make the children laugh, the children will know that they are safe. Now, that's when I started to build everything. That's when I started to put together what world peace would look like. You know, there's this moment in Walking Dead, 6th season. They left Terminus. They're walking to Alexandria. Huh. Easter egg. Easter egg. They're walking to Alexandria. And someone asks Rick, or Rick asks someone, what did you notice was missing at Terminus? There was no children laughing. And as they approached the gates of Alexandria, you heard the children laughing. I am a huge advocate that right there is when the show should have ended. Nothing more needed to be said. The children were laughing. I think if the show had ended there, it would have done much, much better. Morally and ethically and artistically, not financially. The children were laughing. And I thought, how many children are laughing now? How many adults laugh now? I don't know how. I actually have to study the psychology of humor to figure out what it is. I know that story and listening and communication and imagination are the problem. The problem because they've been taken away. So I know what happens when you remove these elements from a human body, from a human mind. So I have a plan to put them back. I know what's going to happen to the human mind when these things get put back. It's just a domino that I'm knocking over, one little domino at a time, and the whole thing is just falling through, and I'm going, yep, everything's lining up exactly as I saw it. So no, I don't just make wishes at random, because it's really important that I get this right. Which is why I haven't manifested money yet. Actually, I'm starting to, because I'm starting to get to a point where I'm like, all right, so if money is this, and if this is here, and if this piece is here, and if this piece is here, then ethically I can say I want X, and I know it's going to be okay. So I want money. I want like $2 million to start, because the moment I have that money, it's going to go right into the garden, and I'm going to launch this thing, and it's just going to boom, like wildfire. It's all set to go. It's amazing. So it goes like wildfire, and I know the minute it catches, holy fucking shit. It's all automated. It's all ready to go. I got to make sure I can handle the load as it comes in. I can. I'm there now. Now, what am I missing? Evaluated all the pieces. I have to make sure that I prioritize myself, because that's going to be the sixth perspective. That right there is it. Make sure that I prioritize myself, because as this comes in, I can't be self-sacrificial. I have to make sure that I also maintain my sanity so that I can pull this off, because it's going to be organizing the entire shifting of this world. I am going to shift the perspective of every human being in this world in one, and it's got to go slow. And that's when I realized that shifting perspectives is traumatic. Pause. Let's stop. Let's pull back. Let's reassess. What kind of traumas does a person run into when they shift a perspective? Anna, go. Okay. We evaluated case study number 1. And we noticed that case study number 1 experienced significant self-loathing because he couldn't manage the accountability that came in. That is correct. So what needs it? We need self-forgiveness established at the first ethic. Once the self-forgiveness is in place, what other emotions are they going to require for them to pass through the accountability? Because you've got to get them through the accountability. They are going to have significant grief. The fifth perspective is going to be the problem, which is why everyone stalled out at the fourth perspective. It's actually an avoidance, because they know the sins they've done. That's it. You have a lot of crimes to answer for. Not you personally, you, the world. We have a lot to answer for. Now, it is a rite of passage every time you get into the fifth perspective. Let me clarify this. Every time you graduate from the fifth into the sixth perspective, you gain remorse. And that remorse, let's pull out physics now. This is emotional energy. Remorse is equal to the ethical contradiction of one's actions. Remorse is equal or greater to the ethical contradiction of one's actions. That is the second law of emotional physics. The second law of emotional energy. That remorse is always equal or greater to the ethical contradiction of one's actions. Every time. How do you handle that kind of remorse? Self-forgiveness. Repent. Make up for it. Transform. Change. Do better. I created the garden. That's what this is. My remorse. It's not just my remorse. That's part of it. My redemption. and the value of my pain. I had to give my pain value to make it worth it. So I created the garden. So the garden is my redemption and the value of my pain, which is why so many people turn to healing, is because they're trying to compensate for their sins and transgressions. They are in the redemption and the value of my pain. If you cannot compensate for the pain you've caused others, that's when you spiral. In order to compensate, see, and here's it. This is it right here. This is the psychology. You can compensate. You can self-hate. It's a spectrum. It's always a spectrum. So your extreme is an asshole or self-loathing. Where's that middle between? That middle between, that go between, that center, that beautiful balance. Transformation has to take place. You have to change. You have to change. But you have to change into something different. Self-loathing does not redeem you. You have to change it into helping others. You have to help others. You have to help others. How do you help others? There it is. You have to help others to compensate for the damage that you've caused other people. How do you help others? How do you give back to make up for the karma? Because that's really what this is. This is karma exchange. You need to give back. You need to pay it forward. This is forgiveness, forward giving. So when you get into the fifth perspective, you are going to have this in place. Otherwise, you're going to fall into a pay it forward, self-loathing, just eating yourself up. And yeah, so you're going to have to come up with a plan for helping others. You're going to have the emotions in place, which is what the first perspective is going to have to focus on. I'm going to have to go back to the first 5 perspectives to make sure that these ethics are in place in the fifth perspective in order to make sure, in place by the time you transform over to the sixth perspective. Otherwise, you fall apart. Now, according to the Bible, we call this Judgment Day. Yes, this is Judgment Day, by the way. This is what it actually looks like. This is when you translate the Bible according to the 11th perspective. So this is Judgment Day. Sixth perspective is equal to Judgment Day. What happens next? That's it. I have to go through and make sure that these ethics are in place in the first 5 ethics before I can make sure you guys have it. I think that's everything. This is, by the way, where we get to world peace. This is the one hiccup I saw. My partner opened up to me and talked, and I found this in him, and I went, oh my God. Yeah, it's traumatic going through the stages. That's why we'd have extremes. That's why we go from one extreme to the other. Is coping. You need the proper coping skills. You need the proper, but it's not coping. Coping is the wrong. You need the proper self-management skills, which we're back to that first perspective, self-management. So what is self-management? What is the first perspective? Come on, Anna, get through this. What is the first perspective? If it's self-regulation and it's forgiveness, how to live with you. How to live with yourself. So you have to do self-regulation. You have to do self-forgiveness. You have to do comfort. You have to do emotional management. What are all of these things together? I don't have a word for this. Can you tell? I have all the little words, but I don't have the big word. Now I know the value, I know the authority, I know the autonomy. I am so tired. It's this first perspective that just keeps coming in. You must define the first perspective in order to get this done. And that's why you haven't been able to continue the work, is because you are stuck not knowing exactly what the first perspective is. The problem is we were all infants when we were in the first perspective. So we don't have the database that we can go back through. Maybe if I could talk to 2-year-olds. See, the problem is 2-year-olds can't communicate yet, which is the problem. We need to sit down and talk to a bunch of 2-year-olds. Tell me, what was it like being an infant? Can you remember? Can we ask children this? Ask children, what was it like being a baby? Oh, that would be a great question. Let's start asking our children that. Let's ask them, what was it like being a baby? Let's ask them that. Do you remember what it's like being a baby? Have we asked any child this question? Do you know what it's like being a baby? Because I don't know what it's like being a baby. It's been a long time since I've been a baby. Let's ask the children. Can we all do that, please? I actually need this. Can you ask your children for me? What is it like being a baby? And then comment on the link below. Either comment to this video or click on my Linktree account and then click change now and ask Anna, and then tell me what the children say. I need this data. So here's the third question for you. What is it like being a baby? Because I bet you they know, they remember, because you always remember from the nearest perspective. Like I remember the 10th perspective. The 9th perspective, I have to go back on my notes. You always remember the perspectives close to you. So you can anticipate what's coming in the future, and you can expect, or you can, I'm so tired. Or you can assess from the past perspective. But after that, there's a perspective gap. And good God, I'm at the 11th perspective. I don't remember anything from the first perspective. Now, I experience something similar to the first perspective every time I have a perspective shift, which is that disorientation, confusion. There's a lot of sitting down and observing. A lot of observing and just going, all right, but just wow, shock and awe, just a lot of shock and awe. Yeah, I think that's it. Shock and awe, curiosity. Shock and awe, curiosity. Yeah, I hear you. I'm writing it down, girl. Curiosity. So shock and awe, curiosity, disorientation, observation, listening. Asking questions. What's that? They would point. Information gathering. Student. I hear you. Student. It's a full student. Student of the self. Wow. Student of the self. A self-student. Know thyself. Thank you, William. Know thyself. Student of the self. Self-student. Know thyself. Know what comforts you. Know what your emotions are. Know all the parts of you. Know. You're in a state of complete ignorance, vulnerability. Extremes again. Extreme vulnerability. Values, resources. Invulnerability. What's the opposite of vulnerability? Isn't that an interesting question? What is the opposite of vulnerability? Is that a word? Vulnerability. God, I'm so tired. Opposite. Resilience. We're learning resilience. Is the opposite of vulnerability and refers to the ability of an entity to resist or recover from damage. Wow. Wow. An infant is learning resilience. The first ethic is resilience. Self resilience, and then resourcefulness. Wow. You have to experience extreme vulnerability to develop extreme resilience. Wow. Let's look up the word resilience. Capacity to withstand or recover quickly from difficulties, toughness, the ability of a substance of object to spring back, elasticity. You know, children are spongy. They are springy. Wow, what's the etymology on this word? The word resilience derives from the present to recoil, to jump back. Latin verb resiliere, meaning to jump back. To bounce back or recoil. Avoidance is recoiling. Avoidance is an extreme case of resilience. No. Avoidance is the extreme. Vulnerable to avoid. You need to be resilient. I see. I see. The opposite of avoidance is vulnerability. So people who experience significant vulnerability went to extreme avoidance as children and never recovered. They never learned how to be resilient. That is the first ethic. There it is. So now I get to ask the question, what are the ingredients of resilience? Ho, ho, ho. I'm tired. I need to sleep. All right. If you love shit like this, like, subscribe, follow, comment below. Let me know what part of the show resonates with you. If you want to learn more about what I do or submit any of the 3 questions that I have, the 3 questions, I'm collecting stories for data. The first question is, what is your energy story? I want to hear about your energy story. When you first realized that you had access to energy and that there was something else more out there, I would love to hear your story. The second question is, what does world peace look like to you? I want to know what day in the life of world peace looks like to you. Describe it to me. If we woke up to world peace tomorrow, what would the day look like? What would it look like? What would you experience? I want this information. The third question is, if you have access to a 1.5 or a 2-year-old, ask them, please, what's it like to be a baby? Do you remember? Can you describe what it felt like to be a baby? Use the words feel like. What did it feel like to be a baby? Now, you're probably going to get a lot of things back like, I'm not a baby, or I'm still a baby, which is going to be really funny. Please put that in the story because that's going to crack us all up. So please ask them, what does it feel like to be a baby? Ask them. If you want to submit any one of these 3 questions, please click on the link below or submit your answers to any one of these 3 questions. The more the merrier, please. If you want to submit a question for all 3, that would be greatly appreciated. Click on the link below, click on Change Now under my Linktree account, and then submit your questions on a form. Thank you so much. Seriously, the more data I have, I'm so excited. I'm just eager to hear your stories. Thank you so much, and may the kindest of words always find you.